It was my second solo trip abroad, and I had chosen a small, charming hostel in Budapest for my stay. The city was known for its beautiful architecture and vibrant nightlife, and I was eager to experience it all. The hostel seemed like the perfect base to explore from. It had great reviews, and the photos online made it look like a cozy, welcoming place. But nothing in those reviews prepared me for what I would experience during my stay. I arrived late in the evening, exhausted after a long day of travel. The hostel was quiet, and when I checked in, I was greeted by a young woman named Eva. She was friendly but seemed distracted, almost a little nervous. After handing me the key to my room, she quickly showed me to the stairs leading up to the second floor. I noticed the building was old, the wooden floors creaking under my feet, but there was something charming about it. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of dust and aged wood. My room was small but cozy, with a single bed, a small desk, and a window that overlooked the street below. I unpacked my things and sat on the bed, looking through some tourist brochures I'd picked up earlier. By the time I was ready to sleep, it was well past midnight. The street outside had quieted down, and the only sounds were the occasional creak of the building settling. But as I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't the building, it was the silence. There was something unnatural about it. No sounds from the other rooms, no footsteps, no voices, just eerie, suffocating silence. I dismissed it as nothing more than an overactive imagination and eventually drifted off to sleep. The first night passed without incident, but when I woke up the next morning, I noticed something strange. A small door, barely visible, was nestled between two walls in the corner of the room. It was hidden behind an old, tattered curtain that I hadn't noticed the night before. The door was barely large enough to fit a person through, and it didn't seem to lead anywhere. I stood in front of it, my curiosity piqued. It was locked, but I couldn't remember ever seeing a key for it. I pulled open the curtain to examine it more closely and noticed a strange symbol etched into the door. It was old, worn, almost as if it had been there for centuries. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was just a storage closet or an old maintenance room. But something about it nagged at me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't supposed to know about it. Later that evening, after returning from exploring the city, I overheard two of the other guests talking in the common area. One of them, a man named David, mentioned something about a hidden room in the hostel. He said it was a local legend, a place that was never spoken of, a room that the staff refused to acknowledge. He quickly hushed up when he realized I was listening. This piqued my interest, but I didn't have much time to press him for details. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the door. I kept imagining the worst. What if there was something terrible hidden behind it? I tried to sleep, but the silence in the building was oppressive. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again, the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the hallway. At first I thought it was just someone else walking to their room, but it didn't stop. It was the same rhythmic pace, like someone was pacing back and forth in the hall just outside my door. I pulled the covers over my head, trying to ignore the sound, but it seemed to grow louder. The footsteps sounded closer now, as if they were heading straight for my room. I froze, my heart racing, listening intently. Suddenly the sound stopped. The silence returned, but it was worse this time. It was too quiet, too still. I lay there for what felt like hours, too scared to move. But eventually, the exhaustion from the day overcame my fear, and I drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about the footsteps. When I asked Ava about it during breakfast, she just smiled weakly and said, "It's an old building. Sometimes the floors creak, don't worry about it." I wasn't convinced, but I decided to ignore it. Still, the feeling of unease lingered. That evening, after returning from dinner, I walked past the door again. The symbol was still there, and now it seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the hallway. I was overcome with a sudden urge to open it. I had to know what was behind that door. I looked around to make sure no one was watching, then quietly tried the handle. It was locked, but something strange happened. As I turned the knob, the door gave way just slightly, as if it had been waiting for me to open it. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed the door open a crack. Beyond the door there was a steep staircase that descended into darkness. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of decay was stronger here. I had no idea where the stairs led, but I knew I couldn't just leave it alone. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped into the darkness, my breath echoing in the stillness. The stairs were old, made of stone, and they led deep underground. After descending for what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the bottom. My phone's flashlight barely illuminated the small damp room at the base of the stairs. It was cold down there, and the air felt heavy with a sense of dread. The room itself was empty, except for an old wooden chest in the corner. The chest was covered in a thick layer of dust, as though it hadn't been opened in years. But what really caught my attention was the strange symbol on the chest. It matched the one on the door. I approached cautiously, my hands trembling as I reached for the latch. Just as my fingers brushed against it, a loud bang echoed from the top of the stairs. Someone was coming. I rushed back up the stairs and slammed the door shut behind me, my heart racing. I stood there frozen in fear, listening, but there was nothing, no footsteps, no voices, only the silence. The next morning I checked out of the hostel without a word to anyone. As I walked away, I glanced back at the building. The windows were dark, and the door to the hidden room was locked once again, as if nothing had ever happened. I still don't know what was behind that door, but I'm sure of one thing. Whatever it was, it didn't want me to know.